Hi, boys and girls. My name is Keith Perley. I'm a new tutor with Tutoring with a Twist, and today I'm going to read Baseball Bats for Christmas, a book by Michael Averlik-Kusugak and illustrated by Vidania Krikova. You can see from the page, it looks pretty cold there. There's an igloo, there's some sled dogs, and you can also see that the book's been in print for over 25 years, so it's an older book. There we go. It was a glorious time, even for a very asthmatic boy. Averlik was 7 years old, and Averlik was very asthmatic. He struggled when he walked, and he struggled to catch his breath when he sat down. And Averlik loved Christmas. In 1955, Averlik lived in Repulse Bay. And just to get away from the story for a second, Repulse Bay is way up here. You can see that red dot in the north of Hudson's Bay. Vancouver Island is way down here. So Repulse Bay is quite cold. I'll show you a picture of what it looks like even today. Ooh, very cold. Snow, not very many people there, and very chilly. But beautiful. Now back to the story. Let me tell you a thing or two about Repulse Bay. There's a brass plate on a rock outcrop that was put there when Averlik was just a baby. And no matter how many times you hit it with another rock, it will not come off. Averlik's mother would say, "If you knock that brass plate off that rock, the whole world will come to a terrible end." Averlik imagined a brass plate coming off and the whole world blowing air out through the hole like a giant seal float, bouncing around and around all over space. Hit it time and time again, but to no avail. It sits there, still, declaring for all the world that Repulse Bay is smack dab on the Arctic Ocean, way up at the north end of Hudson's Bay. Less than 100 people lived there in 1955, and in winter they all lived in igloos and sod huts. Another thing about Repulse Bay is that there are no standing ups, or as Peter, Jack, Ivo, and Averlik later found out, things commonly known as trees. There's not one single tree to be seen anywhere. The land is as bald as the belly of a dog with newborn puppies. In 1955, though, trees arrived in Repulse Bay. There were 6 of them. They came in by airplane. As usual, the Union Jack had been hoisted up the flagpole just before they arrived. The Union Jack always went up before an airplane came. Then Rocky Parsons flew his trusty Norseman over the Arctic Circle and ran out of gas. His engine went put, put, and quit way up there in the sky. His propellers stopped going around. But Rocky Parsons glided his airplane ever so gracefully and plunked it down in front of the Hudson's Bay Company store. The trees were brought out of the airplane and dumped on the snowbank in front of Averlik's hut, and there they sat. Rocky Parsons was our hero. When people were sick, he always brought a doctor, and when we needed stuff, he always came. He appeared in fair weather and foul. All the manager of the Hudson's Bay Company store had to do was hoist up the Union Jack, and Rocky Parsons would come. But we could not talk to Rocky Parsons because we did not understand any English at all. We just smiled at him and dreamed of someday flying with him. Rocky Parsons smiled back as he pumped gas in his airplane from a 45-gallon drum. He pushed and pulled the lever on his pump back and forth, squish, chuck, squish, chuck, squish, chuck. Then he jumped back into his airplane and sat down on his pilot's seat. The Norseman spit out a lot of thick smoke. Then the propeller started going around with such a big bang that it made your ears dizzy. He went way out on the ice with the skis on his airplane, bouncing over the snowdrifts. Flop, 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 flop. Then, turning around, he took off with a deafening roar just over our heads. He would not come back until Union Jack went up the flagpole again. But there were the things he had brought, sitting on the snowbank in front of Averlik's hut. They were green and had spindly branches all over. What are they? Jack asked. Standing ups, Peter said confidently. I have seen them in books in the church. Father Didier showed them to us. What are they for? Peter shrugged his shoulders. I don't know. They did not have too long to wonder about them. Of course, Christmas was coming. There were things to be done. There was church to go to at midnight. Everyone gathered at the little mission. The older people sat on benches against the walls. The younger men and women stood. The kids played on the floor in the middle. It was warm, and there were electric lights, the only electric lights in all of Repulse Bay. On the walls were pictures of the Pope, the Bishop, and Queen Elizabeth. Also on one wall hung a giant pendulum clock. Father Didier, a tall, thin man in a black robe, stood with the men and women, smoking his pipe. Around his neck he carried, by a string, a black cross with Jesus nailed to it. He was a kind man who enjoyed a good laugh. He was our priest, he was our teacher, and when we were sick, he was our nurse. When the clock chimed midnight, the curtains in front of the church were opened, the benches were rearranged to face the altar, and the people sat, women and girls on the left, men and boys on the right. Averlick sat with his mother. Father Didier donned a white pleated robe, and over that, a fancy vestment with a cross on the back. Peter, who was an altar boy, put on a white robe with lace at the helms, and the service began. There was a big organ in the church with giant foot pedals and lots of buttons. Father Didier adjusted the buttons, pumped the pedals, and played, swaying back and forth as he moved his fingers over the keys. The music filled the small church, and the people sang, "O come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. O come ye to Bethlehem." And so Christmas came. Christmas was the time when you took your most favorite thing in the world and gave it to your best friend. Averlick trudged into Peter's igloo with his toy gun, the one with the bullets that looked real, like real bullets, behind his back. He said, "Happy New Year," gave the gun to Peter, and left. Peter Happy New Year'd from him a pair of caribou skin mitts, which Averlick wore until the palms had no fur at all left on them, and they were still warm. Averlick's father gave his only telescope and got a wild dog in return. The dog ran away for a whole year and came back the following Christmas. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not catch her. When all else failed, Averlick's father lay on his belly on the roof of their hut and waited. He had a lasso in his hand. When the dog approached the bait he had set, he rose and, twirling the lasso around his head, he threw it. The lasso flew away, way out, and landed right around the dog's head. The hours and hours Averlick's father had spent playing cowboy had paid off. When they finally tamed it, that dog became the best lead dog they had ever had. That Christmas, the manager of the Hudson's Bay Company store gave Averlick a blue and red rubber ball with a white stripe around the middle. We loved to play ball. We would set up 4 bases, find a stick to use for a bat, and play. If you had a good stick, you could hit the ball a long way. Evo was the best hitter. He was always the biggest and strongest. But there were no trees in Repulse Bay. And when there were no trees, you could hardly ever find sticks to use for bats. At Christmas, in 1955 though, there were trees in Repulse Bay. There were 6 of them. Evo, who was also the smartest, looked at those spindly trees with a twinkle in his eye and said, I know what those things are for. What? We all asked. Baseball bats, Evo replied. Rocky Parsons brought us baseball bats for Christmas. He got an axe. He took one of the spindly trees and chopped off all the spindly branches. Then he fashioned a bat, a real round bat. After much hacking and swinging of the bat to see how it would felt, it was ready. When the kids in Repulse Bay found out about our bat, they all came to play. Evo batted first with Peter pitching and Averlick playing catcher. Averlick always played catcher since he could not run as much as the other kids. When Evo hit the ball, it went way up and far, far away. Yay, 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 yay. Everybody cheered, jumping up and down. Sometimes when he hit the ball just right, even Averlet could run all the way around and touch all 4 bases before Jack had time to get the ball and hit him with it to take him out. Averlet would then sit on the 4th base and puff and cough and try to catch his breath. Then he would smile and laugh and laugh. We played ball all that spring and summer, making more bats with the spindly trees when they broke. And in autumn, we could hardly wait for Christmas, when the Union Jack would go up the flagpole and Rocky Parsons would once again bring us baseball bats for Christmas. Tama.